Um,
You know what the coil heads look like?
no.
Me after I get off work.
Cold Beet Soup is a podcast for casual fans who want to explore lore and fandom rabbit holes in music and gaming.
And are sad sometimes. And we're live.
Welcome to Cold Beet Soup.
See how I didn't interrupt you this time?
I did. I appreciate that.
No problem.
That might have been the one, you know?
You would have been like, all right, and you just leave, and I'm just like,
Like, you know what? I don't care that I've researched this topic. I don't care that I spent time, theorized, looked at all these different things. I'm out. Just been like, I'm out. I'm done.
Mm.
Um, yeah. Speaking of the topic, let me just put it up for everybody to see so everyone knows what's going on today. You raised your hand?
Can
It's
you see all
fine.
the emotes?
No.
Oh.
Now all I see is my presentation. I don't have to see anything at all. Uh anyways, um so this is interesting. Lethal Company, we played this when it came out. Me,
Did
you,
we?
I think it was we played this with Brian, 100%.
We did?
I just don't remember when we played. Yeah.
Huh.
Did we not? Am I?
Imagine.
Dude, I swear. No, because no. We definitely played
We did.
because
We've played
I
with
pinged.
Sheep. We've played with Brian.
Yeah. So we played this when it came out. It's been a while. They have there's only one developer.
Really?
Um, yeah, yeah. His name is Zeekers. He did some development for like Roblox. But he also has like a few games on Steam. Um, but this was the one that really took off of all the ones that he's done. Um, and I think he's working on a new game as well. I don't think this is even finished because there's some stuff in the game. Uh, there's a part that we're gonna get to that looks like it's the end game part, you know?
Mm.
Because there is a story. The whole reason, sorry, this is very long-winded. I'm very tired, so you guys get that experience today. So I apologize to everyone in advance. Uh, the reason why I even like thought about this topic is because we played this back in the day, and I was just like, well, this is a scary game and just goofy Gavin over here. And then a couple weeks ago, one of my friend groups was like, "Hey, we haven't hung out. Like, maybe we should all game together." And I was like, "Hell yeah!" And we settled on this game, so we started playing it. We played it a couple times, and it has some new stuff. So there's some new maps, some new items, some new monsters, which makes it, still interesting. Um, but one of my friends was saying like, "Oh, there's like a whole storyline, right?" And I was like, "What? I didn't know that." So that's what kind of sparked this whole interest for me. Once I started researching it, there's a lot, mostly because the way that Zeekers uh wrote the story, there's some stuff that's pretty open-ended, which I think makes it great for, podcasts like ours or just people that like to, theorize and come up with their own stories because you can fill in the gaps, how you want. Um so it makes it really interesting. It is pretty creepy, uh, which is why I made the thumbnail look like that and the title, so scary because it is when you like really start looking into it, you're like, oh, this is kind of messed up. So I hope that uh if you're listening and you listen through this and you're like, wow, I want you to talk about this more, like, can you do an episode just on the bestiary, or can you do a focused because you can really like get into little rabbit holes
Mm.
within this lore. So what I try to do for the sake of us, because I know how our attention spans can be, I was trying to just take the story, consolidate that, and then threw in a couple of big theories that I really enjoyed, um, and leave it at that for today's episode. But again, like if you really enjoy it, leave a comment and say, I want more Lethal Company because I will happily do it. I think it's super interesting.
Remember, just a
Um,
side note, remember when we played,
mhm.
was it Submarine Divers?
Murky Divers?
Yeah, there you go.
Uh huh.
Yeah, it's like this, except underwater.
Yeah. I wonder if Murky Divers has a story.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It might. So, for those that don't know what this game is, so this came out late 2023. It's an indie horror game. And the general premise is pretty simple. So, you boot up the game and you show up on this like unmanned spaceship with you could play by yourself, but it's really intended to be multiplayer. um, so you can have a maximum crew of 4 people in the base game, and you guys show up. This automated voice talks to you like, "Hey, welcome, welcome to the company. Thanks for working with us. Blah blah blah. You have 3 days to hit this quota of scrap. So you go to random planets, you find scrap." Um, and as long as you find enough scrap to meet the quota at the end of the 3 days, you can keep on playing. The caveat to this is that when you're exploring for the scrap, it's at these like abandoned, seemingly abandoned moons. Um, but as you enter in, monsters start to spawn, and that adds some, chaos to the game. There's also proximity chat. I think that was the major, like selling
Yeah,
factor for the game.
and you won't be talking about the mods because the mods added a whole lot of like.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the mods. I did want to bring up that mods existed.
Mm,
So like when we played, I think we had quite a few mods.
mm,
But anytime a game like adds mods, you open up like a whole other level of gameplay.
mm.
Some mods add like quality of life things, like we had that better scanner one, for example.
My
It just
favorite,
made the
my favorite
mhm.
mod was the one where you could, if you die, you know how you could watch your teammates play. With
Yeah.
this mod, you could also watch from the eyes of the monsters, and it's
Yeah,
so.
I remember that one. That one was my favorite mod is the Yippee one
Oh,
where it's the loot bug. So when you come in and the loot bug just goes Yippee,
yeah,
and
that was
it's
great.
not as scary anymore because the loot bugs inherently loot bug. If you're like new to the game, you don't know loot bugs are like these little creatures that will actually be docile until you have some loot, and then they start to attack you. They'll also steal loot.
Mm.
So yeah, it's only scary if like I'm a very jumpy person. I don't like
Yeah,
scary games,
she
so like
she
walking in
is. she, you should see us play Phasmophobia together.
I hated it. I hated
The
it
lights go
so
out. She's like,
much. Listen, when you've listen, I just don't like stuff happening suddenly. I'm very jumpy. So actually now if you see me playing Lethal Company now, you'd be really impressed. I go in without a flashlight.
didn't you say you
Uh
tried to play by yourself recently and that it was too scary?
it's scary by myself, but with friends I'm not afraid.
Friendship power.
Yeah. It is actually because I'm like, oh, well, at least I got people with me. Like, if something happens, like, whatever. But by myself, I just get in my thoughts. With
Oh,
friends, you're kind of like messing around and
you know
yeah.
what the worst mod was? The cat one.
Oh my God. Yeah. We should clarify because cats are awesome. It was
Yes.
just that the cat, so the mod is the cat is added as like a scrap item, so you can find a cat somewhere on the map. But what happens is when you bring the cat back to the ship, it continues to meow.
Mm-hmm.
And there are monsters that go off of sound. So we had a couple instances where we had the cat and one of the monsters heard it and would would attack us from the ship, like while we were in the ship.
Yeah.
So we had to stop using it because it was just so ridiculous.
It
Like,
was so funny the one time we were surrounded.
it's like Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ. Yeah, so I mean that's basically the game. You look for scrap, the monsters show up. There's interior monsters, exterior monsters. Most of them don't go from one point to the other. I'm saying most of them because some do. Um, that was actually I think after we played.
Do they add them in
Unless
after? Because I've never seen that.
yeah, well, mimics will sometimes spawn
Oh,
outside.
is that the one that has the that like is
The mask.
yeah, fucking
Mimics
bad.
have that mask.
Mm-mm.
There's a new enemy called the Man Eater. And I don't remember if it can go outside. You can bring it outside. Okay, so maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong actually because you can bring the Man Eater outside. So basically, the Man Eater is this baby. It looks like a little slug thingy. And what happens is when you're in, whatever facility, the mansion, wherever it spawns, the baby like walks up to you and is just kind of looking at you. And if you like drop something or make loud noises, it'll start to cry.
Mm.
So you have to pick it up to make it stop crying. If it continues to cry, it eventually uh like evolves into its adult form, which will kill you. So some people will take the man eater and bring it outside, when you bring it outside, I think it will automatically like turn, and then of course it can kill you from outside. The strat that I've seen is they take a shovel. So they bring the man-eater outside, they take a shovel and like hit it as fast as they can while it's transforming to kill it before it can kill anyone.
Hmm.
Yeah. But now that I think about it, I don't think anything else can leave or come inside. Yeah, I think they're segregated, so that's my bad. But anyways, so that's the game. Um, what else was I gonna say? Oh yeah, I mentioned that the ship was unmanned. It also has an autopilot thing, so you use this terminal throughout the game. We're actually gonna talk about the terminal quite a bit, because that's where you run all your commands. So if you want to route somewhere, you put it in the terminal. You want to buy something from the company store, you put it in the terminal. And funny enough, and there's all these posters along the walls, and there's actually this post-it note that I never noticed in the entire time that I played. And the specific thing that my friend said when we played was, "Hey, did you know there's lore in this? If you look at this post-it note, this is kind of how you start." So for the audio listeners, it says you're in deep access file Sigurd. And if you type Sigurd into the terminal, you get to see log files. Now, by default, you only see one log. So the way you find all the other log files is by exploring the moons. There's actually one in the company building, when you can go down that
Mm-hmm.
hatch and go. There's one over there. So they're just scattered around. You just got to look around for them. There's 13 of them total. And we're going to talk about the logs today. Now, I did not want to read every single one all the way through because that would take way too long. But again, if someone in the comments is like, I want you to like really dissect the logs, I can do that too because it would just take more time. So I kind of consolidated the ones where a lot of major plot points happen, at least in my opinion. Um, Before we get into the logs, though, we really need to talk about the setting, right? The where and the when are we? Because we don't even know that yet. So the where is a place known as the Thistle Nebula. So in this particular world, humanity has been exploring space and colonizing for the last like several hundred years. Um, we know this because a lot of the bestiary entries, so the bestiary is where all the monster entries are, where they give you some information about what the monsters are, what they do. You can also look at that through the terminal. And a lot of the bestiary entries talk about how certain species are evolutions of species from Earth. For example, the spider. There's a giant spider in the game. this spider is a larger version of like a real spider. Um, the scariest and creepiest part about this spider is it's the second largest discovered. It says it in the bestiary entry. So it's not even the biggest spider. That's just the second biggest.
Ooh.
Um yeah, I was like, "Bleh,
Yucky.
bleh." No,
No. No.
you yuck. No, thank you. Um, the um the way they talked about it was there was mentioning of something called the boat, and they carried like these species across the nebula. The boat literally makes me think of like Noah's Ark, but like in space, where they just had all these, animals
Mm.
around, and then they just kind of, time went on and they just turned into really creepy, messed up things. Um, and in terms of time, so the date gets kind of interesting. When you open up the terminal, we see a couple dates. So the first one is the current date. The current year is 2532. Now I'm not sure if this is written in month, day, year, or day, month, year, because like Europe, they do
Mm.
uh the day first, so it could either be in March or in July. But either way, it's way far in advance. Um, Also, we have a copyright. So there's a copyright up here for the software that's being used from 2084 to 2108, which is quite a bit earlier than this. Now, I don't know how much you know about copyright for like IT systems or just like technology. Uh I didn't know that much. I thought it was weird at first. I was like, "Oh, what's up with this copyright thing?" But using old software isn't like necessarily strange. It could be that they are dependent on a legacy system, or once a copyright expires, the technology is just out in the public domain, so anybody can use it. Because there's no copyright on it anymore. Um, I was thinking about the legacy thing. Um, so just keep that in mind because I don't want to spoil it just yet. But the legacy thing is what makes me think this is why the copyright is a lot older than the date. There's also the mention of this name, Halden Electronics Inc. Now, supposedly, this is the company that also made the scanner, the ship cameras. So, a lot of like the equipment that you use. There's also a new item known as the company cruiser. So, this was not there when we played.
Mm.
But it's worth a lot of money. But what's cool about it is you can store a ton of scrap in it. There's also a giant magnet on the side. So, because I've been watching this guy stream the game. His name is Bread. Like no joke. He has a PNG tuber of like a little piece of bread. Um,
Hell yeah.
and him and his friends are really good at the game. And I've seen it where, because at the end of the day, you only have so much time in a day to collect scrap. So you usually land, it's around like 8, 9 in the morning, and then by midnight, like the ship will leave. I have seen it be 11:55 p.m. He's still by the like main entrance and he does these like two jumps on top of rooftops and to like magnetize himself to the ship as the ship is like flying away. It's insane. I was like, "Holy crap." So yeah, you can do that. The company cruiser is really useful. But the reason why I put it on the slide is not because of like how cool it is with high level players. It's because it also says Halden Electronics. Um, so there is this theory going around that I want to address because I think it's worth mentioning. Some people are under the impression that the company, because the people you work for in the game are just called the company, are the same company as Halden Electronics. Um, I don't think that's the case personally. Um, just because just because they're using their technology does not mean they are the same company. I think of it in like a very logical way of if their name was Halden Electronics, why wouldn't they just say, "Hey, welcome to Halden Electronics. You're working with us now." Like, it's very often that, like, it's common that you'll see, like, on trucks or other stuff, like, branding or whatever. Like maybe the company just didn't have the technology and they bought a package from someone. I mean, that's a normal thing for companies to do.
Hmm.
But I just wanted to address that theory because some people do believe that they are one and the same. Um, I don't necessarily think that's the case, but I do think it's an interesting theory nonetheless. Now, I wanted to bring up that copyright thing again with the legacy systems because the logs look like this. So the logs are kind of old looking. They almost look like tape cassette type things. And that's because the logs are actually from 1968.
Hmm.
So, yeah, so we have this other date, right? The current, year is like 2532, but all the logs we're reading are from 1968, which is from forever ago. My best guess for how this came to be is whatever terminal they were using was pretty old, maybe from Halden, maybe not from Halden. Eventually they kind of upgraded some of the tech. When you upgrade software, sometimes you'll add like backwards compatibility, and maybe they kept this log retention thing for a while, and maybe after some time they were like, we're not going to do this anymore, because companies do that all the time. They're like, no, we're not supporting this anymore, it's super old, it's a pain to code, blah blah blah,
Yep.
so then they just won't do it, right? So why not have it be that the company is just using this old tech because it works. Everything is like an ecosystem together, right? Because you have the scanner, you have the cameras all working in tandem, and they can still read log files. So why not? Just my 2 cents. But let's get into the logs themselves. So I don't know how you want me to do this. I was just going to, r- if there's like a couple sentences that I want to talk about, that's what I'll say. I wasn't planning on reading the entire thing, but I can if you want me to.
Maybe read it for the audio listeners, because
Okay. Yeah. So the first log is dated August 22nd, 1968. It says, "Hello. I'm writing this log to keep myself sane. I couldn't find a way to do it. Oops, sorry. I couldn't find the way to do the most basic thing. The me being tired is going to be rough. I couldn't find a way to do the most basic thing on this old janky butt computer, so I had Desmond add it in. The log feature. Till now, I've just been adding my own notes to the bestiary, whatever I know. My brother said I should keep a journal, so I'm doing what I can. I'm writing in a professional manner, as these logs could become a historical record, as they will probably be here for years, just as long as there isn't a clean wipe. That is what Desmond said. So there's some typos here, but
yeah.
I'm just reading past them because yeah. If you are reading it in the future, you are probably from another crew. The turnover rate here is enormous. Maybe because this job sucks and everyone turns over dead. Maybe I can give some help when I have some experience. End log. Oh, our names are Sigurd, me, Richard, Desmond, Jess. So you can see this is a four-man crew. Sigurd, from the post it note, is our author, our narrator.
Mm.
So this log, I wanted to kind of consolidate the summary of this with another log from, I think it was like a end of August. So they, because this is just an intro, and on the end of August log, he also talks about how they also arrived on this unmanned spaceship. It was on autopilot. They got a fake voice giving them all the instructions, and they signed away their freedom. And they were promised a large amount of money in exchange for working for just one season. I don't know if this in this world seasons work the same as ours or if they're shorter or longer. Um, but they're like, hey, you're gonna get a ton of money and it's a short job, which, that definitely insinuates danger, right? Like,
Hmm.
how else could you get people to join? Um, so 1968, I want to talk about that because in our timeline that we are in right now on Earth, the moon landing was in 1969. So, in this particular game, by 1968, they had already explored a ton of moons. A lot of them. were abandoned, right? When we're playing, these places are abandoned. There's no other human in sight. So not only have these moons been colonized, the people have left for whatever reason. Um, which means that w- th- humans over there are way more advanced in, space technology and all that. Funny enough, because they're using an old logging system, but they're at least way more advanced in space travel than we are. Um, it also makes you wonder what kind of wars happened because a lot of the exteriors kind of look like bunkers. Uh, some of those buildings are very industrial looking with like gray walls and secure doors. Um, when you enter a couple of them, you see turrets, you see landmines,
Mm-hmm.
which also confirms that like there must have been a war or something was happening here for whatever reason, which makes you wonder. Now, I brought up the war thing because there's a new bestiary entry since we've played, a new enemy that talks about war in their entry. It's called an old bird. So the old bird looks like this.
Oh.
So, yeah, so the old bird is only outside. Granted, it's huge. I believe it's, yeah, 19 feet tall, 11 feet wide. It's got this super bright spotlight, and it's got this giant speaker on its chest. That's almost like a, what did they describe it as? Sound Sound cannon is how they call it in the bestiary entry. And then there's the two speakers on the shoulders. Then you got the one arm that just launches rockets, and the other arm that's a claw. I'm not going to read this bestiary entry because I just explained everything that's in it, but
Yeah.
just summarized it. But the one sentence I do want to read off from the entry is that old birds are one of the first extraorbital weapons to be used and mass produced. Mass produced in what? Oh, the old bird is an autonomous offensive weapon of war with a humanoid design. So this clearly states that these devices were used in war and they still exist, when we are exploring different moons. Um, the thing that's interesting about the old birds is actually another bestiary entry, and you may or may not remember these guys, but these are coil
Ah,
heads.
yeah. Fuck those things.
Yeah, so coil
Mm-mm.
heads, um, I'll read off I won't read the sign. Well, Vir colligaris, or colloquially named coilheads, are a recent discovery and have not been studied extensively due to their extreme unpredictability and dangerous properties. They have been known to combust into flames when being dissected or even deactivated, and they carry dangerously high levels of radioactive particles. Due to this and other reasons, it has been highly speculated they were created as biological weapons of war, although this has not been proven. The reason why I brought up the old birds first, uh, compared to the coil heads, is because in the old birds entry, it's confirmed. Here, it's highly speculated, but not proven. Although, I mean, it seems very highly likely. The reason why I brought up this one after old birds is because it almost seems like the old birds were made to counter the coil heads, in the sense that coil heads have dangerously high levels of radioactive particles. Old birds are actually activated by radioactive particles. So, do you remember in the game how there's a room with oh my god, I can't remember what it's called. Apparatus. Yeah, apparatus. The glowy yellow thing that brings power. And
Yeah.
yeah, once you grab that, a bunch of radiation emits
Mm-hmm.
and then two monsters spawn. So what happens with the old birds too is once you grab that, the old birds will get activated because they detect the high levels of radiation.
Mm.
Um, Coil heads also don't like loud noises and they don't like bright lights, which are exactly what the old birds have. Now, one of the arguments I heard was, well, the coil heads are only inside and the old birds are only outside, so how can they counter each other? Well, what if the old birds are meant to just contain the coil heads from going outside? Because think about it. Old bird is standing there, it detects a coil head, and then the coil head's not going to want to go outside because it hears loud noises and well, it doesn't know about the bright lights probably, but it'll hear the loud noises, and the loud noises sound like a baby crying. It's like really unsettling. Um,
You know what the coil heads look like?
no.
Me after I get off work.
You know what's like really creepy about the coil heads
uh,
is when I don't know if you knew this because this isn't the full bestiary entry. I wasn't gonna like get into
mm,
the details, but when they kill you, it says that they turn your head into a coil.
mm,
Have fun sleeping tonight, guys. Anyways, um, so I also wanted to bring up another entry, not necessarily, well, yes, because we're still on the same thread of war. So there's the Nutcrackers.
I remember these.
Yeah, so they're considered, this is their full bestiary entry, the guardians of the house. They watch with one tireless eye, which only senses movement. It remembers the last creature it noticed, whether they are moving or not. So, nutcrackers, when they're walking around, they can't see you. But when they stop and the eye pops up, that's when they can see you. And if you move, they'll start shooting at you. Well, it kind of seems like the perfect counter also to a coil head. Because remember, the coil head moves when you're not looking at it. But when
Mm,
you're looking at it, it doesn't move. And since nutcrackers are guardians, it makes me wonder if they were created to protect people from coil heads potentially infiltrating their homes. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? I
no,
don't know if you can see me raising my eyebrows.
I
Oh
do.
God.
I was just
Um,
hoping it'd pass, but it just kept going.
I just looked like I had a seizure. That's
Yeah.
okay. Audio listeners, nothing happened. All right. So I want to get into the next log entry. Um, I guess I can read it out. Gosh, this suit is squeezing me like I'm a gosh damn mummy. I'm a grown man. Give it some space between the legs. It's killing me. I'm dying. I hope you're happy, Dad. I finally got a job. Screw you. Everyone here smells, especially Rich. I'm gonna throw him in the lake. I don't care what it's made of. I love being on camera duty. Oh, forgot the date. It's August 24th, 1968. This keyboard has semicolon. Today we found a couple frying pans and a big nail, worth almost nothing. What is the company even using it for? So the reason why I highlighted this entry is of course it shows how the terminal is special, so it's hard to type. I wanted to point out two things. One, uh everyone smelling. He talks about Rich especially smelling multiple times. And him already speculating within the first few days, what is the company using this random scrap for? Just kind of a, why are we even here?
I asked
The
the same
next one,
question.
why am I here? So this one is probably one of the most interesting log entries. It actually says August question mark 1968, so we don't know exactly what day it is. But this one gets really interesting. I talked to a voice on the walkie talkie. It was like a part of the screams. He told me the golden planet actually existed. It's not a legend. And he told me it didn't just hit a meteor. He said the planet was swallowed up by the beast. And they were in its body being digested. I asked what the beast is, and he said he didn't know. He said it ate the planet and they forgot everything. Couldn't get him to stop talking. But I said he was on the other side of a big wall and I could get him out. I said he was inside the building. And that's when he started freaking out. Couldn't make out a word. I think he said something about spitting out the rinds. So I just turned it off. What a whack. Jess says the Golden Planet is just a story. I said, I know, I'm not an idiot. Well, she said I should quit, and she quits if I do. So she's staying. So a lot to unpack here. Um, Supposedly there is a legend about a golden planet. Now, the reason why I put this entry up because in a later journal entry, Sigurd says, I started wondering how I can't remember how we really got here. And he was talking about how, like, I don't remember getting on the shuttle. I don't remember saying goodbye to my dad. In my dreams, it feels like the company isn't trapped at all. They're just hiding. And he's like, I don't know if I'm going home. So he's definitely starting to like lose it a little bit. Um, Insanity levels is a thing in the game, kind of similar to Phasmophobia. There's a new, I don't know if when we played the girl was there. There's like a little ghost girl.
Mm-mm.
Um, yeah, she has no bestiary entry, which makes sense because she's a ghost. But basically, what she'll do is she shows up and haunts a player.
Oh wait,
Only the
no, there
player.
was. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the little girl that like skips around.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So the ghost girl, the way she picks the person to haunt is the person that's like the most paranoid. And they determine that in the game by like you looking around a lot or turning, you know, like looking behind you a lot. So like basically the most likely to like go insane. So it is kind of a thing in the game already. Um, but this golden planet thing is very interesting because they're talking about this beast that swallowed everything, including this planet, and how it um basically made everybody forget their memories as well. So I want to explore this theory a little bit further. I just found a picture of a golden planet because there isn't one in the game. But I think the best way to kind of lay the foundation of the theory that I'm getting at here is to talk about the company building. So every 3 days, when you hit the quota, you go to the company building. It's on a planet 71 Gordion, I think is how you actually pronounce it. But when you show up, it's just like very industrial looking, giant wall. Um, there's this alcove, and this alcove is where you drop off the scrap. This percentage level will, of course, change depending on the how much the company is buying things for. There's the intercom, and there's this little slot here, and once you drop the scrap off and you press the button, uh, a little tentacle will come and grab it. That's right. I said tentacle, as you know, you've played.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you remember what happens if you press the button too many times.
Nothing.
Nothing?
Mm-mm. I never died to it.
Died to what? What are you talking about?
To nothing.
You snitched on yourself. I never died to it. Who said anything about death? Like, so Vicky, with a terrible poker face, so if you press it too many times, the tentacles will fly out at you and actually kill the closest player. So if there's two players standing there, it'll only kill one of you, which is really funny.
Oh,
Because the other one's just left there. Anyways, I guess it's not funny. But so I put a picture of the tentacles on the slide here.
watch if we
Um
get flagged.
why? Why
Tentacles,
would we get flagged? Do tentacles
tentacles,
get why do they
anime.
get
Oh,
oh, but
you're
what
so
about like
you're so
octopus and
naive.
what about octopus and squids?
Oh, you're so naive.
But they do videos. What if you want
Yeah,
to learn about
videos.
octopus? But what if you want to learn about
Octopus or
octopus?
octopus?
Why'd you stop your sentence? I don't understand. Are you okay? Do you need a break? I didn't even think that would be an issue, but I
No,
guess
I'm
I
just
am
messing.
naive. Oh,
But,
oh.
tentacles, when I hear tentacles, I think of not, you know.
I think that is a good discussion for a professional. Um, because I was like tentacles, like an octopus. Like that's what I said right away. And I say a lot of cursed stuff, so
You know
I
what
don't
I
know,
saw today
man.
at work? A little side note. Our truck.
Uh, no, go ahead, tell me.
uh, we monitor the cameras, their dash cams, and
Uh huh.
a truck hit a cow, and you just see the cow come out of nowhere,
Oh.
and then it's just blood everywhere. It just splat like it was like a fucking a bug
Aw,
on a windshield.
that's
Uh,
crazy. Yeah, can't get any ground
every
beef
time
from
I
that,
sent
huh?
the video to like my colleagues, I just wrote moo.
Like, hey, I'm thinking burgers for lunch. What do you guys think? Thumbs up. Um, anyways, the reason why I brought this up, what I'm getting at is, what if the beast that swallowed this golden planet is the same one trapped in the company building? Maybe that's why Sigurd doesn't have some of his memories. Um, and I want to kind of elaborate on that more as we go on, but it's just wanted to lay out that foundation. Um, I also think that something that could be interesting, the intercom will say stuff sometimes. That intercom right here will be like,
Mm,
the company thanks you, or you're our greatest asset, or whatever. So there's actually a couple of prompts that are rare in the game. Like have a really low percentage rate of spawning, I guess. So a couple of these lines, I'm going to read them out to you because they're really unsettling. So one of them is, the company must stay happy. The company must, and it just cuts out. So it seems like they were going to repeat that. Another one is, this wall cannot contain, and it glitches out. So it either sounds like this wall cannot contain it, or this wall cannot contain me. I've heard people argue for both. I listened to it like 5 or 6 times. I honestly couldn't tell. I'm leaning more towards it than me, but like you can make arguments for both. Another one is that they say we need you, and then it just glitches out. And these dialogues had me wonder if it was the monster kind of like hijacking the intercom for a second and talking,
mm.
especially the wall one and the we need you. The company must stay happy, I still think is maybe like sentience, but trying to frame it in a way that you'd understand. Um, but yeah, I think that's very interesting. Um, and we're going to talk about it some more. Another thing I find interesting for the monster itself is that the highest valued scrap in the game is a gold bar. The second highest, I think, or second or third, is the cash register. So these are two things that have gold in them, or items of huge value. And I mean, the beast did supposedly consume a golden planet. Like, but does that necessarily mean the planet is made of gold? I don't know if that's a bit too on the nose, but
Well,
those
gold is
metallic.
usually
Uh huh.
gold.
Go ahead.
Uh, doesn't really lose value, right?
True.
So,
True, it doesn't. So it could be that. I will say that in general, the metallic scrap is worth more than like the whoopee cushion
mm.
or the rubber ducky. Um, so it kind of makes you wonder in that regard. Um, Also, our bodies, like if we die, our bodies are only worth like $5. They're not worth a lot. And it makes me wonder if it's because it takes a very long time for the monster to break down biological matter versus like with metal, maybe metallic stuff is just easier. Even like when um when you fail, so if you do fail in the game, you don't meet a quota, you get thrown out of the airlock. You don't get fed to the monster, you just get thrown out. Maybe they're like, it's not even worth feeding you to the monster because you're not valued that much, which is kind of sad, right? Kind of messed up. It kind of touches on the fact that like humans are very expendable in the game and replaceable.
And in real life.
We're worthless. Um, it also makes sense, that golden planet theory, because Sigurd was supposedly, well, he thinks he was talking to someone beyond the wall. So he thinks on the walkie-talkie he was talking to someone that was swallowed by the beast.
Mm.
because he offered to let the person out. Now, this could also be in a, well, is it, maybe he's just insane and that's it, right? So the next piece, log entry, kind of sad. And I'll read it out. So we left behind Rich. We just had one room to check, and then we could be done for the day. I couldn't get the door open, and then I looked, and Rich wasn't there. It was the fucking wrinkly skin flower head man that walked on two legs. It turned his neck. I heard the crack, but he wasn't there. I wanted to find Rich, even if he was dead, but they are cowards. Their faces are blank like idiots. There's nothing moving in their stupid skulls. All they wanted to do is leave. They were going to leave me, too. We all hated Rich, but we didn't want this. This isn't worth it. It's just not worth it. We got a pair of scissors, a box full of stamps, and a bundle of cords. Sell for nothing? It's not worth it. What does the company even want it for? The date we last saw Rich is September 7th, 1968. So, kind of sad. They had to leave someone behind. I pointed out this entry um, to talk about their faces are blank like idiots because this is going to come up in my theory later. Um, and again, asking what does the company even want it for. But the more important thing I wanted to touch on is the skin flower head man that walks on two legs. We know that as the Bracken, right?
Oh
Because it,
yeah.
yeah, we in the entry he talks about how the neck was snapped. The Bracken's really interesting because the scientific name Rapax folium translates to predatory leaf, roughly in Latin. Um, there's a debate on where like what the genus is, where it comes from. Um, but it's one of those things where it's not Rapax folium is like not based on a real scientific, like the scientific names it's coming from is not from like some other animal. However, there is a link with the Bracken and the forest keepers because in the forest keeper entry it talks about how it's believed to share common ancestor with Rapex folium. So somehow this forest keeper and the bracken are related. Um, One interesting thing about the forest keepers is the scientific name Satyrid procaridus. Sorry guys, my Latin's pretty terrible. Satyride. Oh my god, Satyrid, Satyrid, very hard word to say. It might refer to a subspecies of butterflies. So somehow distant, because butterflies, I don't know if you knew this, but butterflies have like eye spot markings
What do you mean?
sometimes. It literally just like spots on their wings that look like eyes.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So they do it, yeah, they like do it. Usually it's like a defensive thing. But yeah, so like this kind of looks like, I mean, a more creepy version, but like similar eye spots to the butterflies. And it also makes you wonder, like, if you're like a distant relative of a butterfly, how did you turn into this? And how did the bracken turn into this? Now, I have my own theory, and this is kind of like, I haven't heard anyone say this, so maybe it's just me being crazy. Um, but it makes me wonder about all the radiation levels and stuff. You know how like radiation can make things look really like messed up?
Mhm.
Like, Simpsons, I think they had the fish with like three eyes. It makes me wonder if like Brackens were even at some point people. Because it does look like a person,
Mhm.
but just like super tainted with radiation that they evolved into this thing and like they are very shy, right? Like you can't stare at it for too long because it gets intimidated and will attack. So maybe it's like a tandem thing where like the radiation kind of fucked up this butterfly to some, I don't know, epic proportions, but then also there was a guy, I don't know, an old colonist or something, but they created these types of creatures like brackens. I don't know. It's just my like 2 cents. I know it's kind of a flimsy theory of just like radiation makes things look creepy. Here's a creepy thing. I think radiation made this creepy thing. Like that's
Yeah,
my,
logic.
yeah, flawless logic. So that was my only time to insert this theory was from that log entry. I also think it's cool that these two are tied together because you see that sometimes. in the game, just like, oh yeah, it's based off of this thing or based off of that thing. So I just thought it was cool to point out. Now, this is a log entry from September 13th. Sigurd talks about how he called the company to report an accident. Everybody else was too scared to do it. And when he called, it was the same fake voice he remembers from the interview. Um, and he said that they would contact the family, find a replacement, and it also talked really fast. One thing that I really wanted to point out was that he said you can hear the screams all the time in the walkie-talkie when you're at the wall of the company building. They didn't believe me. Well, now they do. It sounds just like when I heard it a couple weeks ago. They want to quit. I said, I'm not a coward. I just got this job. So, funny thing about the screams thing, one of the items in the game is like an old cell phone. And when you have the old cell phone, you can hear a woman screaming sometimes.
Oh.
Now, at first I thought, oh, you only have to stand by the company wall to hear it, but I heard from somewhere else that you can hear it from anywhere, which is a little unsettling. It makes me wonder if like the screams are somehow connected to the beast, because the beast will take, these old phones and maybe it's like still making a connection and it can hear the people that were swallowed up by this planet-eating beast. Pretty pleasant thought, not really. Couple weeks later, there's a log entry where let's see. He talks about the new guy Lucas, how Lucas is confused and scared. So they got a replacement fairly quick because he called September 13th. So uh, within, less a couple weeks less than I think, because I think there was an earlier entry where he talks about Lucas as well. I know he doesn't because he says the new crew member. So yeah, they got a new guy really fast. And one thing I wanted to point out from this log entry is that Desmond traces the call. Because when the company talks to you, right, they're making some sort of a phone call, and he found out that there's people um that aren't actually the ones that are calling him from the company are not actually calling from the company building. They're calling from across the entire solar system. And they're like, why would it be so far away? Sig uh why do I want to call him Sigmund? Sigurd's theory is that what if there's a really big monster in the company building, like the voice told me on the walkie-talkie? They trapped it and we feed it to keep it tame. I just wanted a stupid job. So, yeah. Desmond, I brought up Desmond too because he's kind of the techie in the group. Um, and he will come up later as well. So, couple food for thoughts from that log entry. Um, this one was, I don't remember what date this one was. The most important thing from this one, beyond the fact that, like, as we're reading these, you can definitely tell that, like, Sigurd's kind of losing his mind a little bit.
Mm.
Uh, for whatever reason, we can theorize on that as well. Um, but the thing that really makes you think, "Oh, what's going on with you, buddy?" is that he says he saw Rich on a hill. He's over on the other side of the
Do you
river.
hear that?
Yeah, a little bit. Is that him?
Yeah.
There's some little DIY projects going on in Vicky's house, so apologize if you can hear
Yeah.
the the hammer sometimes. But he said he saw Rich um after
Bless
excuse
you.
me, after Rich died, which is not possible. So why there's a couple reasons why he might have seen Rich. The obvious one is he's losing his mind. It's not a real person. He just, made it up in his head. Another explanation could be a different crew member. They all wear the same jumpsuits. Maybe he just mistaken them. Um, Another one could be the mimic or the
Mm, yeah.
masked, which we talked about a little bit earlier. The way these work, for those that have not played the game, these masks are scrap uh, in the game. So there's a comedy one and a tragedy one, a smiling face and a sad face. And if you hold the mask on your face too long, you'll end up wearing it, and then basically you die. And then the goal for the masked or the mimics or the zombies, whatever you want to call them, the goal for them is to multiply. So they will just try to find people, and then when it finds you, it vomits on you and turns you into a masked. And that's kind of how that goes. Um, so maybe he saw a mimic masked entity and thought it was rich. Um, the masks are interesting because they are not detected on the scanner, so they don't have a bestiary entry, one. But two, one thing that's scary about them is you could see a person walking, because that little map in the game where you can see where people are.
Mm.
There could be one of your crew members could be walking and the mask could be right behind them and you would have no idea. Because normally you see red dots for the enemies.
Mm.
You don't see that for the masked. Doesn't show up on the scanner. So pretty creepy. They can also just spawn naturally. So maybe what happened to Rich is I'm sorry. I'm thinking out loud. Maybe it wasn't Rich and it was just a mask and that's what he saw. But we don't know. The next log entry is really interesting. It's talking about Sigurd is talking about how he misses his dad. And the thing that I really wanted to highlight in this one was him saying, I hope he isn't staying on Titan. People are saying it's not going to look the same in 2 years. Jess told us they are all about to go to war and everyone is waiting for it. Um, he also talks about how he can barely sleep to meet the quota. He feels like he's being squeezed through a needle. Uh, and he misses like working, when he was with his dad. And he said, I liked when he would drive us out of the town to see the waterfall and we walked up those old wooden stairs. I just wanted a real job. Now, Titan, as you might remember, is a moon in the game.
Mm.
So when we visit Titan, it looks like this. It does not look like a place with a waterfall or wooden stairs. It looks like, freaking bunker, and it's snowy. So what the hell happened to Titan? Um, funny like Easter egg about Titan is if you stand right outside the main entrance and you look on the horizon and it's a clear day, you can see like a city skyline. So it makes you wonder if like was this the city that the dad lived in and now is abandoned because clearly this is back in 1968. So obviously there was a war or something happened because nobody's there anymore. And Titan's like one of the harshest moons in the entire game. So something must have happened in all those years, but I just wanted to bring it up because I was like, well, that's not the Titan that we see. And it also means that when they were playing, clearly Titan wasn't an option for them to go on, right? Because his dad was still there.
Right.
So it seems like over time, the moon options have also expanded, which I guess can make sense as time goes on. This is the final log entry, and it says Desmond, October 15th, 1968. I'm encrypting these logs to keep them hidden, as I fear the system will be wiped if they are found. It's all guys. We're supposed to think it's all just a transaction, but our real job is keeping an incredible terror fed. How long until its fullness ends and its hunger is insatiable? God knows. Maybe it has to do with all those desolate moons. Whoever reads this, I am sorry to burden you with this. Please have a good day and night, as what else is there for us to do? So, this is obviously written by Desmond. That's why I put it there at first. He encrypted all the logs because he's, wanted to protect them. Um, and that's all that we get about the story. We don't get anything else. So the rest of those gaps we have to fill in ourselves. I'm still in the belief of the monster theory. I mean, it seems like this is what Sigurd and the crew were thinking.
Mm.
I think that they just didn't realize that the monster was the planet eating one fully. I think that the reason why their memories were so messed up is because obviously when the monster ate the people, they lost their memories, but they are just within the vicinity of the monster. And maybe the more you're exposed to it, it's kind of like radiation, like it'll get worse and worse, and your memories get more and more jumbled. Think about it. There's no crew on the ship in terms of like a pilot, it's all automated. You do it all like by yourself. The only part they could not automate was the actual salvaging part because I think of the danger level, the layouts change. It's hard to automate all of that.
Mm.
The other thing, um, oh my God, I completely forgot what I was going to say. I lost my train of thought. Oh, the actual company is on is not as close as you thought. They're super far away. What if they're super far away because they know if you get too close, that's when your memories all get jumbled and you slowly start to lose your mind. Um, I also think that um, they are kind of feeding this monster. Uh, I think the quotas are like intentional. I think that the company's intent is to eventually make it so impossible that you can't do it anymore. Because if the monster gets fed too much, it'll get too strong. And when a crew fails, it kind of like resets and it provides like a cooldown period. So for a while, the monster's able to feed on the memories, the scrap, and everything, and it's getting a little bit to be like satisfied enough. But then it's like, all right, we've done enough, and then cut it off for a bit so it can get weaker again. That's just my thought. Like drip feeding it basically,
Mm.
little by little. Um, I do want to point out one more thing, because I think this will also help strengthen the argument as to the monster slowly making them lose their minds, and also potentially the monster messing with their memories, because it almost seems like with this particular part, the monster is trying to get them to break down the wall. So, what I'm getting at, this thing right here, this is like a little Easter egg in the game. So, on the company building, there's that hatch. We talked about it a couple slides ago. You go down that hatch, and if you do some like parkour tricks, you find this thing. Um, the light switches off, but you can turn it off, and you see this giant drill, and it says "Don't tell." And then there's two slots to put apparatuses in them, to power it. And then on the wall, you don't see it on the slide here, but there's a little green circle, and that's speculation is that's where the drill will go. A lot of the people seem to think that the end game will be involved with this drill. Somehow you'll be able to put the because right now you can't do anything to it, but people seem to think that eventually you'll be able to put the apparatuses in and put the drill in the wall, and like there will be some end game thing. Um, so this is the part where I was like, I think that the monster is trying to convince them to break down the wall so it can break free. Because it has those moments that it can communicate, um, using the screams to make the people think, oh my gosh, we got to let these people out. They're trapped. Um, because the monster is smart enough to eat an entire, or strong enough to eat an entire planet. So who's to say how strong its memory powers are? Um, Now, there's another theory, a completely different theory. It's the one that Wendigoon had. Do you know who he is?
Mm-mm.
He's got like almost 4 million subscribers on YouTube. I didn't know who he was either, but he put out like a 3-hour video about this, about Lethal Company. And he came up with his own theory, and I wanted to touch on it because I think it's interesting, but I also uh, I'm not sure he's right, and this is not being me being like Wendigoon's wrong. It's just like I think it's good. I think it's fun to have this sort of discourse when it comes to theories. So before I get into his theory, I do want to talk about one final bestiary entry because I think this will help kind of set the tone for his theory. Did you ever see a butler when we played?
Mm-mm. No.
Okay. So this butler basically like walks around the mansion. Butlers are interesting because if you're with somebody, they don't attack you. But if you're by yourself, they kind of see you as a threat and they start stabbing you with the knife.
Nice.
Now, yeah, it's great. Actually, but when you do kill them, you get their knife. So when you get their knife, you can one shot the butler after any other butler that you see, which is kind of cool. Um, so there is no bestiary entry. Sigurd talks about it. He mentions that they smell like rotten meat and that he hears flies buzzing around their bodies. So to clarify this a little bit, when you kill a butler, it makes a popping sound and a bunch of wasps come out at you. And you just see that this wasn't a person at all. It was just like flesh over the wasps, which is kind of gross and can explain why it smells rotten.
Yeah.
And why I'm bringing this up is Wendigoon's theory is kind of like a bag of bones type hypothesis where his thought is that the monster is uh, basically eating people and chewing them up and spitting them out. Like he used the spitting out the rinds terminology to bring people, back, but they're not fully themselves. They just wear the suits, but they're not actually people. And they go out and collect the scrap for the monster, and the monster and the company are the same. And uh that's how it keeps itself fed, and that's why their memories are so messed up because they're getting chewed up and spit out over and over and over again. His argument was that, like, why does Sigurd have knowledge on so many different enemies? Because Sigurd, for every bestiary entry, not every, for most of them, you see Sigurd puts a danger level on his own, or like he'll add his own stuff. So it's like, how is he able to like encounter all these things and not die? Um, he talks about how Rich smells. Remember how we talked about that early on? Rich smells like death, probably because he is dead. Um, Now, the one point that he mentions as a strength, I actually think is a weakness. So he says that like their faces are blank like idiots. Um, I think with faces being blank, that means you have to take your helmet off and see what they look like because you can't see a
Mm.
person's face. He makes the argument like, oh, because you can't see their face. I also think the smell of death thing is an argument for them not wearing their suits. Because if the suit truly was sealed and protected you from radioactive materials, which is what it's supposed to do, that means that you really shouldn't be able to smell anything unless if you take the suit off. So those are like my two kind of counterpoints to that. Um, I do think he has a good point on the like multiple incarnations thing. Because like how else is Sigurd able to know so many things about different bestiary entries? I have a counter theory to that, which when Sigurd talks about signing his life away, I think that the company uh, took like all of these crew members' DNA and can just like create clones of them over and over again and just send them out because it's cheap, and they don't have to think about it. I genuinely think that the company are actual people because in Wendigoon's theory, he's like, no, the monster and the company are the same. I think the company are real people. I think they're just staying far away because they're like, Jesus Christ, this monster is terrifying, and we just need to like keep it fed so it doesn't eat another planet. And this is how they go about doing it. It still makes it really like messed up and creepy, but yeah, I just think that's to me that I like that theory more than like the chewing them up and spitting them out, but I still think it's a really interesting theory nonetheless. Cuz yeah, that's like the big question is like where did the monster come from? Who is the company? Like what does all this mean? Like why are we reading these logs from 1968? So yeah, I think I basically I'm sorry, guys. Like, I'm really tired today, so this is probably like the most scuffed presentation that I've ever given. So just there's probably something I forgot that I didn't get to. There's just a lot. Like I think I was talking for like an
Did the
hour.
developer ever say when he will be done with the game? Or no?
I haven't seen anything about that. He has brought like continual updates to the game. There's actually a really interesting video on some like an enemy that he added to the game that he then removed, and there was some like lore around that. It's like a type of fox. But the reason why he removed it is like it was kind of busted in the game, so it made it not fun to play. But he just had an update like not that long ago. I want to say version 69 Lethal
Yeah, it's
Company
fine.
release. Yeah, I was like, heh heh. 69. December 14th, 2024.
Hmm.
So not that long ago. And all he really did was adding snowmen, fix some stuff. But yeah, he does like smaller changes and big changes. Remember, as a single dev, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Like like the guy that made Stardew Valley. Um, he spends ages working on bug fixes, patches,
Isn't he coming out with a
and
new game?
yeah, but that's gonna take forever
Hmm.
because he's coding it himself
Hmm.
again. So Haunted Chocolatier, is the game he's working on. He announced it a while ago, um, but he's still working on Stardew Valley. So like he did show some like snippets of it of Haunted Chocolatier, and it's like the same kind of game style as Stardew Valley, but he said it's still like a long way to go and still a lot to work on. So yeah. But yeah, I don't know. What'd you think about Lethal Company? It's kind of creepy, right?
Yeah,
Some monster.
it's interesting about the story.
Yeah, all the logs. Like,
Hmm.
we could really like. I could do a whole episode on just the logs and like dissecting everything that they say, or just like all the enemies because there's so many, and they're just so interesting. Because there's like kind of the some of them are like based off of like childhood stuff,
Hmm.
which seems kind of strange. Like the Nutcracker, right? The Jester. Um, yeah, it's someone was talking about like protecting children or something like that, but then they turned like dark. I mean, there's a lot of twisted like theories out there about this game. But I think it's really cool. Like I really got lost in the sauce. I hope it was like coherent with how I wove through everything. I just feel like it's so hard because there's so many different parts and I'm like, how do I go through this so it makes sense?
Right.
Because it'll be like, oh, here's this thing in this log entry, but we're not going to talk about it for a couple of slides because I have to talk about all these other things first. Like,
No, it worked. It worked.
uh, thanks. You're just saying that. You're just saying that because the viewers are
No,
listening.
no. We
Guys, you
get
don't
off.
know
I'm like,
this.
man, fuck that shit.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was like, you guys don't know this, but once we cut recording, Vicky just abuses me. It tells me I'm worthless and I suck. See, she's even texting me right now on her phone to tell me how
No,
much I
someone
suck.
texted me.
She's like, what the fuck?
I'll tell you who it was after.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah.
I'm glad you had fun. I do want to at some point potentially, this is like a hard pivot. Sorry. I listened to Lady Gaga's new song like 20 times, as you know,
It's a good. I've been
but
listening to it a lot too.
abracadabra, abracadabra, feel the beat that did that from the force around me. Anyways, I watched this interview. First of all, I watched several like pieces of footage with Lady Gaga because I'm working on that mashup thing with her. So I was like looking at footage, and then I got into a rabbit hole as YouTube does to you, and she did this whole video. I think it was with Vogue. They had a book of all of her looks throughout the years because she's very into fashion. She wear She also wore the meat dress. Like, she likes to make statements. She remembered every single outfit from the beginning, and she could, like, she's like, "Oh yeah, the heels were from this designer, and this designer worked on this. This was my idea." And she had a thought for every single look. Every single look. She's like, "This is the concept I was going for." She's like, "This is where I was in my life when I was," and I was just like, "This woman is phenomenal." And one thing she touched on was that she's like, I feel like I create personas with every album that I make. Cuz she had like one, I think it was a red carpet where she kind of looked like a greaser dude, and
Mm,
she's like, "Yeah,
I
that was
remember that.
inspired by like one of my exes who was like that." I was like, "That's so interesting." So, yeah, I think it could be, I got to look into it, of course, cuz I kind of like, before I pick a topic, I like to like scout it to make sure I have enough to talk about. But I think it could be interesting to like dissect all of her albums and just like, where was she at in her life? What was she talking about? What persona did she create? Because with Mayhem, like Abracadabra definitely is hinting at like how people want her to be a certain way,
Mm,
and like, no, like the different, because you know how, I don't know if you watched the music video, but she'll like change her looks.
mm.
So yeah, it's like I'm trying to, you know, not like people please, but like people want me to do a certain thing or look a certain way, or like, so I think it's, or Abracadabra's like, I can just transform into what you want me to be. um yeah, which I think is really interesting. So could be cool. I don't know. Could be
Mm.
nothing too. It could be like, this is a 15-minute talk. Like, but, but knowing me, I love to yap. So it's like,
Yeah.
and then on this day, she talked about this. And then on that day, and Vicky's gonna be like,
I'm gonna be sitting here like, all around me are familiar
sometimes
faces.
I wonder, I'm like, am I torturing her with
Nah.
how much? Thanks, cuz. Well, I hope you guys like the episode. I will try to be more well rested the next time. It's
Me
just been a
too.
stressful time.
Yeah.
For if you guys are feeling stressed, just if you can't talk to someone, try to like find things, hobbies that you like, talk with people, don't isolate yourself.
Get a
Um,
cat.
get a cat. Cats are great. But just hang in there, and I don't know what's gonna happen, but we're all in this. We're all in this together once we know.
All right, I'm out.
All right, see you guys. Bye.
Bye.